the presidential elections are scheduled for May of 1932. Presidential elections are scheduled for May of 1932. Hindenburg, he is 84 years old. Hindenburg is 84 years old. And he's starting to show signs of senility. Okay? He's getting older. He's being senile. He's forgetful. Kind of sometimes giving speeches, not really making a lot of sense. But nevertheless, despite this, he decides to run for president again here he makes a decision to run in January of 1932. Now at this time, Hitler decides his time has come. He's going to run for president as well. So Hitler decides he will run as a Nazi for president. And Ernst Thälmann will run for the communists. I'll put him up there in a second. This is, of course, the coalition of parties that support Hindenburg with him. And they've got Hindenburg, handshaking. This is the way they're presenting themselves there. Hitler campaigns extensively throughout the country. He makes very good use of radio. And critically, Hitler is also, and the Nazis are just spending money. They're throwing everything they got into this campaign. And critically, one of the things the Nazis are doing is they are making very good use of air travel. Hitler is flying to rallies. So he can address different rallies in different cities in the same day. And this is intentional because the Nazis want the people to associate the Nazis with technology, with progress. This is at a time, remember, this is just a few years after Lindbergh made his flight from across the Atlantic Ocean. It's captured the public's imagination all over the world. Airplanes are the future. That is technological progress, right? And so with Hitler flying around, he's presenting himself as kind of the candidate of technology, the candidate of kind of the future. The Nazis, they stopped short of insulting Hindenburg personally. Hindenburg is still very loved and respected, so they don't insult him personally. But what they do say is he's kind of a pawn of Jewish interests. There are Jewish interests that are manipulating him, that are using him. And Hindenburg is not happy about this. He doesn't forget this. Hindenburg is very angry about this. So Hindenburg, they do a first round voting, and they're looking for an absolute majority. They're looking for a clear majority. No one gets the clear majority, but Hindenburg gets, in the first round, he actually does, he does not achieve a majority in the first round. During the second round of voting, only the top three candidates are selected, and as you can see, during the second round of voting, he does get an absolute majority with 53% of the vote, 19.3 million votes. Hitler comes in second with a respectable 37% of the vote, 13.4 million votes, and then Ernst Thälmann, who was the communist candidate, he gets 10% of the votes, 3.7 million. Now think about that. You've got, of course, the center is still the strongest, backing Hindenburg. But these were the fringe parties before the Depression. And now they're polling 37 and 10% of the votes. They're the top three candidates at this time. Hindenburg, then, when he is reelected, he brings in this guy to be his chancellor, Franz von Papen. Franz von Papen. He's kind of a good conservative, and he's a centrist. But von Papen believes... Von Papen's another one of these guys who's a political operator. And he's too clever by half, right? He thinks he's really, really bright. And he thinks he can find a way to co-opt Hitler and the Nazis. He wants the Nazis to support the government, and he thinks he can find a way to do it. And if they can do that, if the Nazis support the government no longer has to rule by Article 48. Remember, Article 48 is very unpopular. The president can rule by decree without reference to the Reichstag. It's very unpopular. It's undemocratic. Again, it's a form of dictatorship. But he says, I can find a way to get Hitler on our side, he'll support the government, and we won't have to rule through Article 48. Now, he's going to try to co-opt Hitler, as we will see, but something else happens in July of 1932, just a few months later of this election. July of 1932, we have Reichstag elections. July of 32, we have Reichstag elections. During this election, the NSDAP becomes the largest party in the Reichstag. 37.3% of the vote. They have 230 seats. In 1932, the Reichstag, or the Nazis become the largest party in the Reichstag. Now, in theory, like in every other parliamentary democracy on Earth, because the Nazis represent the largest party in the Reichstag, by rights, Hindenburg should have asked Hitler to form a government. He should have asked Hitler to become his chancellor to form a new government. He doesn't. And the Nazis are keenly aware of this rebuke, right? They're insulted that that Hitler is not being asked to form a government. And not only that, but the president, one of the reasons why he refuses, of course, everybody, all these centrist politicians are telling him, no, we don't want Hitler in there, we don't want Hitler in there. But another reason why Hindenburg refuses to appoint Hitler chancellor is because Hitler had insulted him in the presidential debate. Now, again, he didn't insult him directly, but he said, well, Hindenburg's a pawn of Jewish interests and stuff. And Hindenburg kind of took this personally, and so he was very upset about that. So that's one of the reasons why he doesn't like Hitler. In fact, as we'll see, von Papen is going to try to find a way to bring Hitler into the government, and Hindenburg will say something to the effect of, I might consider appointing Hitler Postmaster General, but that's it. I wouldn't appoint him anything higher than Postmaster General, right? Okay, so in a parliamentary position, in a parliamentary government, you have the head of state, which is your in this case president. In England, it would be the king, head of state, and then you have the head of government, who is the chancellor. Okay. In the United States of America, that's the same office, the President of the United States. He is both the head of state and head of government. It's a different system. The Nazis are kind of determined to force Hindenburg's hand. They want Hindenburg to name Hitler chancellor. So the NSDAP, because they're the largest party in the Reichstag, they do actually combine with some other parties that support them on this issue. They call for new Reichstag elections in November of 1932. Remember, this is July of 32. The Nazis call for elections in November of 32. The belief is the Nazis are on this upward trajectory, right? Support for the Nazi Party is growing and growing and growing. They're thinking, if we could get 51% of the vote in November, how can the president ignore us? He'll have to take us into power. So the Nazis are convinced that's within reach, right? They got 37% of the vote here. They're thinking 51%, or even close to that, is not unattainable. So the Nazis, kind of in their hubris, are thinking our trajectory is just going to go up and up and up and up. However, when they actually hold the November 1932 elections, they actually lose seats. And now they've only got 196 seats. They are still the largest party in the Reichstag. They are still the largest party in the Reichstag. But now the perception is they're losing support. So suddenly, von Papen, the government, they're breathing a sigh of relief. They overplayed their hand. They thought they had a lot more support than they did. They thought they'd get more support than they would. So they're losing support here. This is a big deal. In politics, perception is everything, right? The perception was they're getting more and more powerful, and now the perception is they're not. They're on their way out. Like I say, these center parties are breathing a sigh of relief. They're thinking, we've weathered the storm. Hitler was this passing phenomenon. We'll have to deal with the Nazis for maybe a few years or so in the Reichstag, but they're clearly on their way out. That was the attitude. So von Schleicher now, Kurt von Schleicher, the creeper, he was, in addition to serving in the army, he was also the defense minister of the Republic, the defense minister. Which is never a good thing when you have a serving general as defense minister, but that was the case. And Schleicher, like I say, Hindenburg's pretty much listening to von Schleicher for political advice. And von Schleicher says to Hindenburg, look, von Papen, he's not working out. Von Papen's not doing what he should do. The Nazis are still pretty powerful. Even though they're clearly on the decline, they're still powerful. You need a stronger hand to be chancellor. And who's that stronger hand? You're looking at him. Kurt von Schleicher. So he essentially tells Hindenburg to make him chancellor. Kurt von Schleicher. So Kurt von Schleicher, like I say, Schleicher creeper, right? He's a political operator here. So in December of 1932, Hindenburg dismisses von Papen, and he brings in Kurt von Schleicher to be the new chancellor. Brings in Kurt von Schleicher to be the new chancellor. So Schleicher now is chancellor, and he's got his own plan for dealing with the Nazis. And his plan is he's going to divide the NSDAP. He's going to divide the party. And how's he going to divide the party? Well, he looks at what divided the party in the past, the northern branch of the party versus the southern branch of the party, and that's what he's going to do. Schleicher approaches Gregor Strasser, who is still a powerful guy in the North German party, right? He approaches Gregor Strasser. And von Papen previously had tried to do this. Von Papen had previously offered Strasser the vice-chancellorship, kind of a way to snub Hitler. And Strasser said, no, I'm loyal to Hitler. I'm not going to take it. You know, if you want to offer anyone the vice-chancellorship, you offer Hitler. But now, he had worked on Strasser. He courted him. He'd really played him up. So now, he's ready. He's thinking Strasser is ready to accept. He's going to offer him the vice-chancellorship, and he's expecting Strasser to accept. If he accepts, he will take at least 40 Reichstag deputies with him, maybe more. That's all that you need to cause a split in the party, to cause chaos in the party. Hitler hears about this, and he has a meeting of all the Reichstag deputies that belong to the party, and he knows these guys that will probably bolt with Strasser. And he gives a speech to these guys, and he tells them, you stay loyal to me, you stay loyal to the party, or else. So all of these guys that were going to go with Strasser, the vast majority of them heel to Hitler, and they agree to stay with Hitler. So it's not going to be as big a crisis. When Schleicher saw that Strasser had lost his support in the NSDAP, well, then he's going to abandon the plan. He's not going to... there's no point anymore, right? The problem is, Strasser, in anticipation, had already resigned his party offices, and now he's just screwed. He doesn't have a position in the party, and he doesn't have this position in government. So Strasser, and he's kind of persona non grata. He's all but expelled from the party for this. So this plot to split the NSDAP comes to nothing. The plot to split the NSDAP comes to nothing. As this is happening, as Schleicher is trying to do this, von Papen is not done. Von Papen still keeps meeting with Hindenburg, and he says, look, I've got a plan. I've got a plan. Now, they had offered in the past Hitler, they had offered him cabinet positions. Von Papen had offered cabinet, but they were kind of low-ranking cabinet positions. They weren't that powerful. Von Papen comes to Hindenburg, and he's got an idea. He says, okay, look, here's what we do. This is how we get out of this problem. We appoint Hitler chancellor. We make Hitler chancellor. But we do it with some caveats, with some strings attached. He cannot create an NSDAP government. He has to commit a true coalition government of all the center parties, and he must be limited. He gets only 2 Nazis in government. Only 2 Nazis can have government positions. The rest are filled with these center party guys, right? These Zentrum guys, these other guys in the center. So the conservatives will hang on to most of the power in the government. And Hitler then, the theory is, Hitler will be a figurehead. And the idea, too, is it's one thing to attack a government when you're running for office. It's something else entirely once you're in office. You have to keep everything going. Power makes you more conservative. You can be as radical as you want outside of government, but once you get into government, you got to make sure that the power works. You got to make sure the water's running. You got to make sure all these day-to-day things are going on. Power kind of tames people. So they're saying power will tame Hitler. Power will tame Hitler, and we will make sure his government will not be that radical. So they go ahead on 28 January 1933. 28 January 1933, Schleicher, he was aware that he's got no real support in the Reichstag. His only support was from Hindenburg. He resigns, and kind of bowing to the inevitable, Schleicher recommends that Hindenburg appoint Hitler as chancellor. So 2 days later, on 30th January 1933, 30 January 1933, Hindenburg appoints Hitler as chancellor. This is an event that the Nazis will later refer to as the seizure of power. The seizure of power. It sounds like a revolution. The Nazis took power. In fact, it was a backroom deal. They brokered their way into power. You'll recall I mentioned, I think on the first day of class, communists tend to have revolutions. Fascists get into power through making deals with conservatives out of fear of communists. That's exactly what happens here. And here you can see Hitler addressing the crowd, people giving the Nazi salute. The seizure of power, 30 January 1933. 30th January, for the rest of the Third Reich, will be kind of something of a holiday in Germany. It's the anniversary of the seizure of power. There's a torchlight parade that was held that night. At long last, Hitler is in power.